Okay, so these 4 dates are a prophecy, and this prophecy is a message against racism. And it's a message against hypocrites in religion, hypocrites, especially evangelical Christians in America who support Donald Trump. It's a message against that kind of hypocrisy. And I'm about to play an interview with Jay-Z, or some excerpts from an interview with Jay-Z. And I did watch the interview with Jay-Z yesterday, but I did not see the start of it. So I didn't see the part that they're talking about in this interview, where he is talking on Donald Trump. Quite interesting. I thought Jay-Z came across as a really nice person. I've only ever known his music before. I've never heard an interview with him before. He definitely comes across as a very genuine, nice person, which is the opposite of what I would say about Donald Trump. And it's also the opposite of what I'd say about Australia's equivalent to Donald Trump, which is Peter Dutton, our head of Home Affairs, head of Immigration and Border Protection for the last couple of years. And they don't call him Australia's little Trump for nothing. He's got the same way of saying things about people from certain countries that you can't mistake as being anything other than what they are, which is racist and demeaning and stigmatizing and demonizing. And I think it explains Australia's attitude towards the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh who have come from Myanmar. I think it's fully explained Australia's lack of reaction of the Australian federal government, lack of condemnation and continuation of business as usual, is a direct reflection on the attitude of Peter Dutton. So this is an interesting interview, and Donald Trump has tweeted that Jay-Z might like to know that Trump's policies have led to more economic prosperity for black people in America, people of color. I think actually Barack Obama inherited an economy that had just crashed after 8 years of the Bush administration, and spent 8 years instituting economic reform, or implementing economic reform, which has led to the growth that is now being seen in the economy in America. It began during the second term of Barack Obama as president, and for Donald Trump to claim all the credit for that after 1 year in power is a joke. If you want to see the effects of Donald Trump's policies, you will need to look probably 5 years into the future. And I doubt if they'll be as magnificent as what he thinks they are now. Time will tell on that. But the point Jay-Z makes is not about money anyway. And so Donald Trump, it's true, has completely missed the point. And while Jay-Z is generally non-accusatory in the way he talks, I think what he said about Donald Trump, and the same can be said about Peter Dutton in Australia, and it's something that a lot of people who I know who work in the childcare sector seem to have similar feelings about in relation to Donald Trump and Peter Dutton. And that is simply that they're not nice people. They are authoritarian. They do seem to promote racism. And the way Jay-Z put it, the superbug of racism. I think that's true. I think that's exactly what Donald Trump represents. He's the embodiment of that. And in Australia, it's Peter Dutton. And a lot of people probably don't know who Peter Dutton is, but like I just said, his Immigration and Border Protection, if you want to come to Australia, if you want to get a visa to come to Australia, he's the guy you have to deal with. Home Affairs, he's probably got the most important, the most powerful political portfolio in Australia. More powerful, I would argue, than the Prime Minister. So, here we go. This is some commentary on the Jay-Z interview yesterday and Donald Trump's response to it.
Sanchez, thanks so much. So as the president prepares for his State of the Union address in just 2 days, his attention is also focused on rapper Jay-Z and comments the music mogul made on Van Jones' new show, which premiered last night on CNN. Trump tweeting this morning, "Somebody please inform Jay-Z that because of my policies, black unemployment has just been reported to be at the lowest rate ever recorded." So, what set off the president? Take a look.
He is somebody who's now saying, look, I'm dropping black unemployment. Black people are doing well under my administration. Does he have a point that maybe the Democrats have been giving us good lip service but no jobs? Maybe he's going to say terrible things but put money in our pocket. Does that make him a good leader?
No, because it's not about money at the end of the day. Money doesn't equate to like happiness. It doesn't. That's not missing the whole point. We treat people like human beings, and then that's the main point. You can't treat someone like it goes back to the whole thing. You're gonna treat me really bad and pay me well.
Right.
It's not gonna lead to happiness. It's gonna lead to again the same thing. Everyone's gonna be sick.
I spoke to Van Jones last hour about that interview, and here's what he had to say. Do you feel like, as a result of the president's tweet, he misses the point of what was central to the conversation?
Yeah, I thought it was, obviously it's good to get attention for the show, but really, he totally missed the point. I mean, Jay-Z last night was stunning. He was confessional. Usually hip-hop, you think, braggadocious and accusatory. He was the opposite of that. He was confessional. He was humble. He talked about struggles with his marriage. He talked about his children. And he really set the kind of example I wish the president would set. The president is now the guy who's braggadocious, accusatory, never confesses to anything, never shows any public growth. Meanwhile, Jay-Z is just growing and growing and growing in front of the public eye. And part of what he talked about, which I think really set Donald Trump off, he talked about the racism in the country. And he talked about how, in a very interesting way, he talked about how the fact that we keep pushing it under the rug, when somebody says something racist and we just smack them down and we push them out of public life, it's making things worse. It's actually making the virus get worse.
Systemic racism.
Yeah. And so but then he said that we've now pushed it under the rug so much that it's now come back as a superbug of racism, Donald Trump. So he called Donald Trump a superbug of racism, and then I challenged myself, well, isn't he doing something good? And then he pointed out, just having a little bit more money in the economy doesn't count if you're treating people badly. It was a profound interview. It was thoughtful. It was substantive. And for the president, who apparently maybe didn't even watch it, for him just to fire off something, I think was disrespectful of an icon in this community.
You got a feeling that the president did not watch the show in its entirety or see the message in its entirety, that perhaps he got a snippet of it elsewhere, seized upon that, misses the whole point about numbers versus quality, in which you make reference to people, in which you treat people. And that was the underlying message. That was the nucleus of the message that Jay-Z was making.
And what's so interesting about this president is he could actually, and it sounds crazy to say this, he could actually learn from Jay-Z. Jay-Z is a very rich person, a successful person, he's a business person.
A fellow New Yorker.
A fellow New Yorker, but he's had one marriage. And he has fought for that marriage. And he was just unbelievable last night, talking about, this is my soulmate, I'm fighting for this marriage. Donald Trump has 3 marriages. I have never heard Donald Trump refer to the First Lady as his soulmate. And if he did, I'm not sure what people would say about that. Also, Donald Trump loves to pick fights with people, like black rappers, like football players, like FBI agents, like journalists. But he's yet to pick a fight with these Russians who messed up our election. He's yet to pick a fight with these white supremacist terrorist organizations that are growing by leaps and bounds and killing people in America. And so why do you continue to pick on certain kinds of people if you want to be a tough guy and leave others alone? I would say that if I were a father, and I am, I would rather have my kid follow the example of Jay-Z, Sean Jay-Z Carter, mistakes he's made that he's confessed to and improved his life, than to base his life on someone like Donald Trump, who makes the same mistake over and over again and never improves.
All right, conversation with Van Jones. Let's talk more about the president's Twitter war now with Jay-Z and his upcoming State of the Union speech with my panel. Joining me right now, Lynn Sweet, who is the Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times. Also with me, CNN political analyst Ryan Lizza. All right, thanks so much. Call it, the Twitter war, but really it's only been kind of a one-way street. It's the president who has sent out his tweet. As far as we know, Jay-Z has not responded via tweet. So, Ryan, let me begin with you. It's 2 days away before the first State of the Union for this president, and this took top priority for him. Why?
Well, there's the Trump of prepared speeches that we'll probably see on Tuesday that are sort of written by the people around him and are often in the business of protecting him from himself. And then there's the Trump of his interviews and tweets where he has no unventilated thoughts. So I think he's doing what Trump always does. He sees an interview, it personally offends him, and he reacts precipitously. Look, if you look at the back and forth, or really it's only one way so far, I think Jay-Z is being the bigger person here, is sort of staying above the fray. I thought his comments about Trump were fairly nuanced, to be honest, and the criticism from Trump was inaccurate. I mean, what he criticized the interview for, actually, that conversation happened between Van and Jay-Z. They talked about whether Trump deserves some credit for African-American unemployment and some of these other things. Acknowledging the numbers.
And defining them.
The way I looked at it, he took a very nuanced and interesting conversation and launched an attack that didn't really reflect what happened in the interview itself.
So then, Lynn, the president presumably will have a State of the Union script speech, and we know the president sometimes likes to deviate or inject a couple, personal thoughts, even when he does have a speech. So the State of the Union, what is likely to be his primary focus? Immigration, infrastructure, or might he even make some references similar to how he just did via tweet?
Well, the answer is, Fred, all of the above. So you'll have the State of the Union, and then you'll have the State of the Twitter Union. It will make him at the same time. It may come a little before. It may preempt whatever he says. There is no reason why today, instead of having this whole segment on ponderous and policy matters, about the state of our nation, we're talking about JC. And it's an important conversation to have. I think any time that Trump brings up race, but it didn't have to be that way. We could have talked about what the presidency is going to do looking ahead. So I think you'll see a lot of programs. I've gotten some briefings from the White House on infrastructure, immigration. He'll touch on trade. Usually these speeches, as Ryan and Fred, are laundry lists. And then you kind of have to listen as to what's new. Trump gave a pretty straightforward speech in February 2017, about a month after he was inaugurated, and he got through that. He got through Davos in a standard speech. I just think that when we look at this as the first draft of History Tuesday, it just may not matter as much as other speeches and tweets. We're just in a new era, so I'm not thinking that this might be one for the history books, because other things the president does may matter more.
Right. So Ryan, it's content versus self-restraint.
Absolutely. And look, the thing that I'll be looking for in the State of the Union is, does he lay out, as the White House has started to do, a comprehensive deal that Democrats might be interested in on immigration reform? And we all know that this reforming the immigration system has bedeviled Barack Obama and George W. Bush, and every time, even though there's a lot of consensus on some of the big issues, the two parties have not been able to get it done. And you have a very interesting dynamic right now where you always had sort of three moving parts with immigration. You sort of had the Chamber of Commerce business wing, which wanted comprehensive immigration reform. You had the Democrats, who largely wanted to take care of undocumented immigrants who were here and wanted a pathway to citizenship for them. And you had the really hardcore restrictionists on the right, who basically have always scuttled the deal but have never been the sort of principal players at the table. Now in the White House, that faction is represented by the president, and so we'll see if that actually makes things even more difficult, or that's the key to unlocking a big comprehensive deal. And I think that's what I'll be watching for, if he lays something out that gets both parties there.
And Lynn, of course, there will be a global audience, but we also understand that in the audience of the chambers there will be absent many members of Congress. And I understand that you have done some reporting and have uncovered yet at least one more name adding to the list of those, such as Maxine Waters, John Lewis, Gregory Meeks, who will not be there.
Well, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who is a Democrat from the north side of Chicago and the northern suburbs, told me the other day that she is going to boycott the speech. She doesn't want to normalize the presidency of Donald Trump, she told me, and that's a decision that she made not to be there. What's interesting is that Democrats in the House and Senate are divided on this. So one of the things we'll be watching for Tuesday is who comes, who doesn't. Who's going to bring guests and what will they symbolize? Who will be wearing black? And just one other quick point to make on immigration, because this is an issue to a lot of budget hardliners. If Trump comes in and says he wants $25 billion, it's for the wall and other border security measures, it'll be interesting to see if when he really gets made a proposal, does he really want, if he's really asking Congress for that in one appropriation, in 1 year, he's going to get trouble on his right flank. It's just usually not done that way.
Interesting, Ryan, too, that the Democratic rebuttal, Joe Kennedy III, and I guess, the logic behind that choice. I guess the Kennedys, notably known as, real barometers of morality, and might that be the inference going on here, or what?
Perhaps. I mean, frankly, the person who gives the response, that job, it's sort of like the drummer in Spinal Tap, it seems like a great job at the time, and then they disappear under unusual circumstances. It's just an impossible thing to do. No politician has really pulled off a response to the State of the Union in a way that truly enhanced them, just because you're going up against the president at the peak of his powers, speaking before Congress, the party applauding him, and then then you have this.
It can really soar or it can really sink.
Yeah, so it's a tough job, but I wish Kennedy best of luck, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Right. Hopefully he doesn't have the drinking of the reaching for a glass of Marco Rubio moment.
Yes.
Anything like
that. There will be a moment.
Okay, there will be a moment. All right, Lynn Sweet, Ryan Lizza, thanks so much to both of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Fred.
And of course, CNN will have complete live coverage of the President's first State of the Union this Tuesday. It all kicks off in Washington, 5 p.m. Eastern.